There are a ton of ways that you can play through Elden Ring, and a million different builds you can go with. However, there are a few builds in this game that are definitely not that good, and one of those is the bow build. So in this video, we are going to be finding out if you can beat Elden Ring with just a bow. So I started off with the bandit class just because they have high arcane, and they come with a bow as well. I chose a very unique name, which was just bow. I really like the simplicity of it. And from there, we made the absolute perfect character, very giant head, and a blindfold to make sure that I hit all of my shots. From there, we went on to fight the first boss, and I honestly wasn't sure how this was going to go. However, upon hitting him for about 40 damage, and realizing I only had 30 arrows, I knew that there was definitely no chance I ever kill him. So, I just allowed him to kill me. And from there, we moved on to the next boss, which is probably one of the hardest bosses in the game, and that is the Soldier of Godrick. This boss proved to be very difficult, however I feel as though I did an excellent job in keeping him away. I absolutely rolled this boss on my first try. That's probably just because I'm really good at the game, and overall, dude got destroyed before he can even come close to me. From there, I farmed some thin beast bones so that I can have some arrows to shoot people with. From there, I moved on down to the round table where I actually tried to kill this guy, and it did not go well at all. He destroyed me and then shot my body a bunch of times, which I didn't think was very nice. After that happened, I realized that it was my appearance that was holding me back, so I decided to go with the tiny head, large body route, which definitely seemed to be much more effective, as you guys can see here by this clip. I was essentially rolling through every single one of these guys' attacks, and they just could not hit me. I think it was because of the fact that my head was so small, and my body was so large that they couldn't really, do any damage to me. So I essentially had blocked all of the damage coming in. After that, I went on, climbed up this archer tower to grab the arrow sting talisman, which is absolutely a necessary part for the build. Afterwards, I purchased some arrows, and I decided it was a great time to fight Morgott. However, it was definitely not a great time to fight Morgott because he absolutely destroyed me, and that's when I decided to go on and farm up a little bit. So I threw this boulder off a cliff a couple times and got enough runes to buy some fire arrows and level up just a little bit. So now I moved on into the Morgott fight with a much larger advantage because, as you guys can see, the fire arrows do a ton of damage, and I knew without a doubt that this time was going to be the time and I was going to absolutely destroy Morgott. The damage was just too high. However, I quickly realized that that was not the case, and Morgott destroyed me once again. So after that, I realized it was definitely time to change up the strategy. So I moved on over to one of the forts just to grab the Nomadic Warriors Cookbook 6, which was home to the blood arrows. So upon getting the blood arrows, third time was the charm, I went back to fight Morgott. And this time it went a lot better. The blood procs made it a lot easier to fight the boss. Overall, this boss was not difficult. The moves were incredibly slow, and I know that that's obviously because, he's one of the first bosses in the game. For some reason, I always think Morgott's a girl. I don't really know why. I feel like Morgott's a girl's name. That's kind of relevant to what's happening right now. So, overall, the attacks are very easy to dodge. The only one that you really need to watch out for is the hammer, because it pretty much can one-shot you. He has a projectile, which is a little bit annoying because it was pretty much pelting me all game and just picking away at my health. But overall, the damage from the blood arrows in the beginning and the blood procs, and then I mixed the fire arrows into it just to finish off the boss. Overall, very easy boss fight, and once I was a little bit higher of a level and had a little bit better gear, it was definitely a much easier fight. And at the end of the fight, I took out my mask to show him who he had just died to, and just make him a little bit more disappointed in himself. And afterwards, we went on to kill the bell-bearing hunter so that I didn't have to farm thin beast bones the entire time. I cheesed the hell out of this guy by just jumping on a roof with Torrent, and I just sat up there and shot him the entire time. After that fight, I shot at a big soup about 1,000,000 times, and from there we went into a cave because I knew I needed some new gear, so I picked up the serpent bow, and I was going to go with an arcane playstyle. From there, after the new gear, we went on to kill Godrick. I had also leveled up a little bit, I believe, just from farming that big ball again, and this boss fight was overall not too difficult, just because I feel like when you don't have to get close to this boss, he kind of has nothing on you. For the most part, his one attack, his fire attack, you can just run away from, and he has another fire attack where he launches the fire up into the air, and it's kind of like a magma thing, but overall that one's not too bad. I know I got hit by it, but that was the only time I got hit by it. The only attack that was kind of difficult to dodge was the one where he threw kind of the wind fire at you. That was a little bit annoying, but overall the one that swept the area, you just dodged through it pretty easily. And then the other one where he just shot fire onto the ground, you could just run away from that. And since I have so much range with the bow, this boss fight was not very difficult. For some reason, I ran into this problem a lot where I would shoot a boss a ton of times at the like at the bottom half of their health bar, or not really the bottom half, but the bottom part of their health bar when they had very little health left. If I was shooting them with blood arrows, for some reason I would rarely get blood procs. And a lot of times, especially in the later parts of the game and the harder bosses, it actually got me killed so many times. So I was hoping for a blood proc and just never got it. But regardless of that, I ended up killing Godrick pretty easily. And I believe I killed him on my first or second try. It might have been third, I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, the boss fight was not very difficult at all. And after the fight, I decided to watch this guy step on Godrick's head, just because I thought it was pretty funny. And one thing I will never understand is why this guy hates Godrick so much. I don't know what Godrick did to him. I know Godrick was kind of like not a great guy, but he just stomped on his head like forever. And that's okay. So after that, we moved on to the Rose Church, where I can farm up some blood roses pretty efficiently. This was definitely one of the most annoying parts of the playthrough, was just having to constantly farm up. The amount of times that I had done this by the end of the playthrough was absolutely ridiculous. After grabbing those, we talked to Vare, and I decided to go with my first invasion, where I had absolutely destroyed the first guy. He really didn't even have a chance. I kind of feel bad. Just because of how OP my build is. However, after that, we made our way down to Bloodtown, and I shot this bird so that I can get some runes. And I used these runes to level up and just buy some more arrows. From there, I moved on to the Red Wolf of Radahn. This was a boss fight that overall I was definitely not excited for, just because of the high movement of the boss, and typically when bosses have high movement and are able to close the gap on you, it tends to be a very, very annoying boss fight, especially when there's bows involved, because you need a lot of range between you and the boss. And overall, this boss fight was actually not very difficult. I was kind of surprised. I was thoroughly happy that it wasn't hard, because I figured going into it, I figured it was going to be very difficult, but I actually breezed through them on my first try, and this is probably because, like I said before, I am the best Elden Ring player in the entire world. And from there, we went over to go up to Rennala, and on the way up, the elevator took too long, and this Carrion Knight came on the elevator with me and almost messed my whole day up. But for some reason, he was terrified of my skin and probably the way my face looks, so he literally abandoned ship and jumped off the elevator and killed himself. I honestly don't blame him, just because of how I look, and that's one of the main reasons why I chose to look this way, is just for an intimidation factor. So once we made our way to Rennala, I got pelted with books. These annoying little kids threw books at my head many, many times, and for some reason, even though this is probably one of the easiest boss fights in the entire game, for some reason with the bow, this fight took me so many tries. I don't know if it was because I was underleveled, but my main theory on why this boss fight was so hard was because of the fact that my damage was not good enough, and I was not able to kill Rennala fast enough. And one of the reasons why Rennala is so difficult is because of the second phase of her fight. She could summon in a couple different creatures. One of those creatures is the Bloodhound Knight. She could summon in a dragon, a pack of wolves, and she can even summon in a giant. And that proved to be incredibly annoying, just because, you have to dodge so many things, especially when there's wolves on you. You have to dodge wolves while finding the time to shoot enough arrows to kill her and do a significant amount of damage while she's just spamming spells at you, and overall it was incredibly annoying. But on the fight where I was actually able to kill her, she did not really summon in too many hard enemies, and I believe she summoned in a dragon, but for some reason it disappeared pretty quickly, so I was not mad about that. This fight took me a lot more tries than I thought it would, but overall I ended up killing her, and to celebrate my victory, I gave a nice little victory teabag after I had gotten naked. From there, we moved on to the Grand Lift of Dectus, and we hoisted up the medallion and moved on to the Altus Plateau. The Altus Plateau was where I was going to get my next talisman. It was guarded by the Demi-Human Queen, whatever that guy's name is. I honestly have no idea how to pronounce that, so I'm not even going to try. Overall, this boss fight was a little bit annoying just because it was very, very closed space. And after the boss fight, we opened up the door and grabbed our next talisman, which was the Ritual Sword Talisman. From there, I went over to Mount Gelmir, where I ran into some heavy inclement weather. And the reason I went over to Mount Gelmir was because I needed to pick up my next weapon, which was actually the pulley crossbow. I know a crossbow is technically not a bow. However, they both shoot projectiles, so I let it slide, and I used crossbows throughout this playthrough. You can grill me in the comments if you'd like. So from there, I decided I wanted to get the white mask as well, just for a little bit extra damage. And this was a giant mistake. And overall, this is one of the most frustrating parts in the game, because I had to fight 3 of these guys. And typically, in the main game, if you're fighting them with swords or whatever, they're not that bad. They're still kind of annoying, but they're not that bad. However, For some reason, I have no idea why, when you're fighting NPC invader type enemies or any human type enemies that have like the ability to roll and stuff, they are so annoying. They will dodge every single arrow you send at them, so the only way you're actually able to hit them is by baiting them in, waiting for them to attack, and then catching them in the animation. It was one of the most annoying parts of fighting these guys, and I had to fight 3 of them. From there, I decided it was a great time to go kill Radahn, and I hit him with a couple blood arrows. It wasn't that bad overall, and eventually I had gotten this proc. As you can see, his health bar drained, and he was literally 1 HP, and that's when I got a little bit too comfortable, and he sent one of these attacks at me. Then this thing absolutely one-shotted me, which was very discouraging. From there, I actually took on the regular Radahn fight, however, and it was not a fight that I was really looking forward to, just because, you know, Radahn is notorious for being incredibly difficult, and the fact that I was going to have to kill him with just a bow was very annoying. So this fight got off to a bad start, and overall, even though I had summoned in people, and this is actually one of the only boss fights that I had actually summoned anyone in, I think this is the only boss fight that I had summoned anyone in for. And the reason I did that is because I feel like it's almost a necessary part of killing Radahn is by having the summons. I probably didn't need to, but, you know, I just decided to go with the summons. So if you guys are mad, I'm sorry. But overall, the boss fight was not that bad. I hit him with the crossbow, give him the Scarlet Rot status effect. From there, we moved on to the Draconic Tree Sentinel, who I made quick work of. As you can see, his attacks were pretty easy to dodge, and then I hit him with that last blood proc, and he dropped. From there, I moved on to the next boss, which was Godfrey. And this boss fight was incredibly annoying. The reason why this boss fight was annoying was just because it was incredibly tedious. So it actually was not a hard fight overall. It was just the fact that it took forever. And the reason it took forever is because this boss's moveset literally consists of a stomp. And I swear, this boss just stomped and stomped and stomped and kept getting closer to me and closing the distance. And overall, like, the only time I ever had a window to attack was after I dodged the stomp attack and was able to shoot him, like, once. So overall, the reason why it was so annoying was because I really only had one window to shoot one arrow. And after that, I had to dodge his next attack, so it literally took forever. And he would just spam the same move over and over again. But overall, I did kill him my first try. Like I said, it wasn't hard. It was just incredibly annoying. So with that being said, one thing I wanted to mention was that if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to drop a like on the video, as well as a sub to the channel. It helped me out a lot. And you can go ahead and comment below if you guys want to see any other challenge series in the future. We can do a torch build or something like that. Whatever you guys want to see, just go ahead and comment it below. But as we're wrapping up this fight, I was only hitting him with the fire arrows just because since he was a ghost, I couldn't imagine that, you know, the blood procs would really work on him. So pretty much the entire fight, I just acted as though the blood arrows would not work, so I didn't even try them. I'm not entirely sure if that's true. But from there, we moved on and got absolutely decimated and stabbed in the head by this Black Knife Assassin. It was overall very unpleasant. But from there, we moved on to Morgott, and this is essentially the same boss as the one in the beginning with just a few more bells and whistles. Overall, there are not that many attacks that were too difficult to dodge, with there being one exception. He would do this spinning attack with the hammer, and it almost seemed undodgeable because of how many times he would spin, and it was like 4 or 5 attacks, and it was just very, very hard to dodge, and if you were in the range of it, you were pretty much dead. Other than that, he had 2 spear attacks where he would lunge at you with 1 spear, and he would also throw another spear. Overall, these attacks weren't hard to dodge either. The only one that was kind of annoying was the projectile daggers that he would throw. That kind of got old pretty quickly, just because it was constantly chipping away at my health, and pretty much every single time I tried to heal, he would throw that at me, which was pretty annoying. Other than that, he only had about 3 other attacks that were pretty much the main parts of his kit. And that was one of his slash attacks, and then he had this this attack where he would pick me up on his sword and kind of throw me, and that one was very, very annoying because it did a lot of damage, and I think I got hit by it twice for some reason. And then his final attack was just he would lunge in with the Blood Flame blade, and it would explode. Overall, this fight was not too bad, like I said. This was another fight I actually killed on my first attempt, and I did not really struggle with this boss at all. But honestly, looking back on it, the reason for that is probably just because of the fact that I am the best Elden Ring player in the world, so it was definitely not hard for me, but most likely would have been hard for anyone else. It did come down to my last flask, however, so I knew I needed to be a little bit careful, and in the future I knew that I needed to upgrade my character a little bit more, whether I needed to level up or get better gear. So that's pretty much exactly what I did after fighting this boss. I went over to grab a Great Rune, and I went to grab actually Morgott's Great Rune, but that's when I realized that there was a boss fight here. I was completely blindsided by this boss fight. I had completely forgotten that it was even a thing, but overall, I was a little bit nervous about it just because of the fact that I had just gotten done, running all the way here, and I was pretty much out of flasks because I was fighting a couple enemies, and I was pretty much out of arrows as well. But honestly, I was very thankful that they were just a couple of chunks, because I was able to just backpedal, jump every now and then, and hit them with an arrow, and they were literally never able to catch up to me. From there, I went on over to grab the Remembrance for the Great Rune, and I grabbed the Morgott's Great Rune, which allowed me to get a lot of health. After that, we went over to the Grand Lift of Rold, where I had a very, very close encounter with this gargoyle. Luckily for him, the bonfire had effectively prevented the ass whooping that he was about to receive. After that, I was making my way over to the Mountaintop of the Giants, where I dodged every single Giant's arrow that they shot at me. Overall, very, very easy for me to do. And after that, we recruited this Giant's help to open up this thing so that I can grab a nice little smithing stone. And after that, I ran into the original Rivers of Blood spammer and absolutely cheesed the hell out of him and got a completely terrible and useless weapon. After that, we actually ran into the Fire Giant fight, and I really was not expecting to win this because I was pretty under-leveled, and my gear was very, very not upgraded, so like everything for this fight was under-leveled, and surprisingly, I killed the Fire Giant on my first try, and I have no clue how I did it. I honestly cannot tell you. It took pretty much every arrow I had to kill this guy because he just had so much health. And at the end, I kind of did cheese him with the crossbow thing, and that's something you guys are going to see in some of the harder bosses. I did kind of cheese them, and I'm sorry, but there is a glitch where you are able to apply a status effect to the weapon in your right hand, and the crossbow will take that status effect. So I would throw on the Blood Flame Blade, and I was just pelting the Fire Giant with it. I did not get the Blood Loss procs very often, but I did get them when they mattered, and overall, the Fire Giant, like I said, I killed him my first try, and usually I have so much trouble on this boss fight, and, for good reason. This is one of the hardest boss fights in the game, just because of the sheer amount of health that he has. Another reason I was actually stressing about this fight towards the end of it was the fact that I had run completely out of not only my blood arrows, but my blood bolts. And when I ran out of those, the only thing I was left with was the fire arrows and my fire bolts. And obviously the Fire Giant is very resistant to all fire types, so I was literally doing no damage to him, and I pretty much had to rely on the little bit of damage that I was doing and the procs from the Blood Flame Blade interaction with my crossbow. But like I said, for some reason, I was able to take care of him this time, and it wasn't so bad. So after I took out the Fire Giant pretty easily and effortlessly, I decided to show him exactly what he was up against. And right before he died, I'm assuming he saw what my face looked like and realized why he had died so easily. So afterwards, there was a couple different ways we could have gone, but I decided to go and try to kill Commander Niall. And this fight was not as bad as I was actually anticipating it to be, but I feel like it's because his moves are incredibly easily choreographed, and you can dodge them pretty effortlessly. Overall, I think I killed Commander Niall. I think this is my third attempt, so I didn't do it my first try. However, I was slightly intoxicated when I was doing this, so I think he had gotten just a little bit lucky, because if I was in the right state of mind, there was no chance he had made it longer than 2 minutes in the first fight, and I would have annihilated him very easily. Overall, like I said, his attacks were pretty easy to dodge. He literally only does 2 attacks in the second phase of the fight. The only really problem that I had with him was in the beginning, when there's 3 of them and you have to deal with not only him, but you have to deal with the 2 assholes that are just following you around, which can be incredibly annoying to deal with. But overall, the blood loss procs were adding up, and I was able to get a nice little blood loss proc right at the end and take care of Commander Niall. So after defeating him, I just have to take off my mask and show them exactly what they had just died to and the abomination. I came back to the round table after that to get my revenge on this guy, and I made sure to drop a nice little teabag on his head. and I lit my girlfriend on fire after that and became maidenless once again. After that, we had finally arrived in crumbling Far Missoula, which was a location I was not looking forward to. I started to fight the Godskin Duo, and this was a boss fight I had actually also killed on my first try, just because I made sure to stock up on sleep arrows before I pulled up on this fight for obvious reasons, because you can put one of them to sleep. So I put him to sleep, and I just focused on the skinny guy, because the chunky dude, he is an issue, and he rolls around, and he shits on me all the time, and I can't stand it. So I always put him to sleep because his moveset is pretty infuriating, and it does too much damage. So after I put Chubbs to sleep, I would just wail on the skinny dude, and eventually the other dude woke up and he came after me, so I had to put him down real quick. And at some point in this fight, I actually did start getting a little bit nervous because I had completely run out of my blood arrows, and I was pretty much just left with the fire arrows, which I did not have equipped, so I would have had to gone behind a wall or something and switch them out. And then I had the sleep arrows, which I was just using for the time being. But as soon as the skinny guy died and it was just me and the other dude, I put him to sleep again, and then that's when I decided it was a perfect time to switch out my sleep arrows, or my blood arrows rather, and pull out the fire arrows. And at this point I had just lined up a perfect shot him right in the dome, and I decided it was time to finish him off and end this boss fight. Like I said, this one was not hard. I think once you put one of them to sleep, the boss fight is not difficult. This definitely would have been a different story had I not been able to put them to sleep, but overall, you know, it is the strategy for killing them, and it wasn't too bad. So after that, I made my way over to the bridge where Maliketh is at, and I took care of his little bodyguard pretty easily. This was pretty much the same as the Draconic Tree Sentinel. Pretty easy to take care of. And after I killed him, I went back to the Rose Church because, you know, I have to farm every single second of this playthrough, and we decided to go back and take care of Maliketh. So the first part of the boss fight was not very difficult. Overall, this boss fight was one of the more difficult ones for obvious reasons. Maliketh jumps around a lot, he has a lot of movement, and it's kind of hard to hit him with your arrows. But overall, I think this boss fight did take me a few more tries than I had hoped. So it wasn't too bad. Could have been a lot better, obviously, but overall, you know, what do you really expect when you're only using a bow and you're fighting one of the hardest bosses in the game? For the most part, he really only has a few combos that are really dangerous, and one of them is the one where he jumps up in the air and he sends all of them at you, and the other one is when he slams on the ground and creates all those little lines that do like a lot of damage, and if you're anywhere near it, there's pretty much no dodging it. So the way I found most effective was to just run away from it. Overall, Maliketh, even though he does have some pretty cool and very quick combos, I found that he was actually pretty easy to get a few combos off on. So he wasn't like some of the other bosses where I had to shoot one arrow and then dodge and then shoot another arrow. Like, it wasn't like that. I was able to pretty easily get a few arrows off, especially because he has some long drawn-out attack. So after some of his more crazy and dangerous combos, he does have a pretty long grace period where you can just lay into him. So that's why I felt that it was just a little bit easier than I had anticipated, just because there was that large window where I was able to get multiple arrows off at a time, and overall his attacks weren't too hard to dodge. However, if I did get caught in some of those combos, they would insta-kill me, and that's why it took me so many tries, is because sometimes I would get stuck in the animation of shooting the bow, I'd get caught there, and he would hit me with a combo and kill me instantly. So after that, we made our way to Lendel Ashen Capital, lit that bonfire, and made our way to the next boss. The next boss was a human-type boss. It was Sir Gideon, and he was very annoying. To start off the fight immediately, I shot him in the head like 4 times, and he deserved that for what he was about to do to me for the rest of the fight. So as you can see here, it's just a lot of him dodging, and like I said before, with these human-type enemies, you pretty much just have to wait for them to attack, which is really annoying, and I think they should probably change that, but I just know for a fact they never will, obviously. But so as you can see here in the part I'm showing on screen, he quite literally just dodges everything until I just completely stop moving, and I just waited for him to attack so that I could bait out his attacks, and eventually, after a very long and drawn-out fight, I was able to kill him. I did kill him my first try. Like, I don't think he was necessarily a difficult boss. He wasn't like the White Masks, who I had so much trouble with, but instead he was just more of annoying. And the fact that he was also able to heal mid-fight was also annoying. The only dangerous part of his kit was the Crystal Soul Spears that he would send at me. If I get hit by those would easily take out like 60% of my health bar, and I have an absolute massive health bar. I think I had like 2400 health with the Great Rune equipped. So after I killed him, I made sure to shoot his body because he was a prick the entire time. And after that, we made our way over to Godfrey and Horalu, or whatever that dude's name is. I don't know how to pronounce it, but regardless, this guy was the biggest pain in the ass ever. This boss fight took me so many tries, and I really wanted to quit on this boss. I'm not even gonna lie. This right here is a clip of me getting him to like 1 HP. I did this probably 5 or 6 times where I got him literally 1. The reason I chose this boss fight instead was just because I feel as though I had some decent dodges, as you can see right here where I dodge everything and definitely don't get hit by a single ability. But overall, very, very annoying boss. He has a lot of health. He's literally always in your face. I never really had a problem with this boss whenever I was using like melee builds or anything like that, because it was never a problem for me that he would close the distance and get directly on top of me. However, I quickly realized that it was a major problem, you know, when I needed range and I didn't have time to attack, and he was able to pick me up and almost one-shot me, and his combos didn't seem like they ever ended. So this guy was a total prick. I hated this guy. I was so happy when I finally killed him. This is not the clip of me killing him, obviously, but like I said, you know, I eventually killed him afterwards, and right here, 1 HP almost. I couldn't get a blood loss proc, which really made me angry, and I ended up dying. From there, we took on the last boss, and guys, I gotta be honest with you, I cheated on it. I cheated for the last boss. I summoned in somebody. It had gotten to a point where I was however many hours into the playthrough, and I just simply could not beat the boss. I didn't have enough damage. They are immune to every single status effect. It's not like I can hit them with any specific arrow that would do a lot of damage. Not to mention that whenever I was fighting the first part, the Radahn part, whenever I was fighting her solo, she actually had a move where she would deflect arrows. I did not even know that that was a part of this boss fight. But she would consistently deflect my arrows to a point where not only could I barely do any damage to her, but even about half the time, about half the arrows I was shooting were not even affecting her. So I wasn't a high enough level, and I didn't want to farm up like 50 levels or even more than that to be able to kill this boss. So I summoned in somebody, you know. I'm very sorry, but it needed to be done. This boss was probably going to be nearly impossible to kill without at least another, you know, maybe 10 hours worth of gameplay, just completely fixed on farming and theory crafting on a new build that worked more around just raw physical damage instead of status effect. So it was incredibly annoying, and I just didn't want to put up with it. So like I said, I'm very, very sorry. But overall, I did end up killing this boss. The Elden Beast part was pretty annoying, I'm not gonna lie. This ring attack was kind of a pain in the ass. For some reason, I couldn't jump over it. I don't know why. I couldn't roll through it either. I see people jump over it all the time, but maybe I'm just too good at the game, and my timing on my rolls are too perfect that it actually is tripping me up. But nevertheless, we ended up killing the final boss. We killed the Elden Beast, and just like that, upon beating the boss, my teammate had turned into a crate, and that's when I knew that I had pretty much beaten Elden Ring with just a bow, but not really. So that's pretty much it for today's video. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to drop a like and a sub to the channel, and comment which one you want to see next. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.